In the town of Idyville, USA, lived Mr. and Mrs. Brown. Mr. and Mrs. Brown had one child, me, Leroy Brown, or at least that's what my parents and teachers call me. Everyone else calls me Encyclopedia, which is a set of books giving information on things. Everyone says my head is like a library, only walking around in sneakers. Ladies who do crossword puzzles in the newspapers stop me quite a lot to ask me questions on, like what goes in the blanks.
Hey, Encyclopedia! What's a three-letter word for Swiss river that starts with A? Hey, thanks!
My dad, the chief of Idyville Police, hasn't failed to stop one criminal when they're speeding or stealing. His secret? Me. When he has a case to solve, he tells me the clues. I don't like to talk about it because who would believe a 5th grader was a super sleuth detective? This is how the spotless police record began. This is Encyclopedia Brown.
Where is your father?
Well, he's probably doing what he normally does. Like, stop crying.
That's not what I meant.
Sorry I'm late, honey. Natty has struck again. He held up a store here in Idyville.
What store, Dad?
The men's shop owned by Mr. Dillon and Mr. Jones. That makes 6 stores he's held up this month.
Are you sure it was Natty that robbed them?
That's what Mr. Dillon said. I have everything Mr. Dillon said written down right here in my notebook. I'll tell you everything he said. Want to listen? I was alone in the store. I didn't know anyone had come in. Suddenly a man's voice told me to raise my hands. I looked up at him. I was face to face with the man the papers call Natty. He had on a gray coat with a belt in the back, just as the paper said. He told me to turn around and face the wall. Since he was armed, I did what he wanted. When I turned around, the money was gone, and so was Natty. With a belt in the back, just like the paper said. He told me to turn around and face the wall. Since he was armed, I did what he wanted. When I turned around, the money was gone, and so was Natty.
Well, did the newspapers ever print a picture of Natty?
No, he never sat still long enough for anybody to take a picture. Remember, he's never been caught. But every policeman in the state knows he wears a gray coat.
Say, the only reason that Mr. Dillon thought it was Natty is because of the gray coat. The case is solved.
There's no mystery here. Natty robbed Mr. Dillon.
Not quite. There was no holdup at the men's shop. I mean that Mr. Dillon wasn't robbed. He lied from beginning to end.
Why should Mr. Dillon lie?
My guess is that Mr. Dillon took the money for himself. He didn't want Mr. Jones to know that he took it.
Leroy, please explain yourself.
It's simple, Mom. Mr. Dillon read about Natty in the paper, so he knew that Natty wore a gray coat with a belt in the back when he held up stores. He said that he knew it was Natty because of the coat he wore.
That could be true.
That couldn't be true. Mr. Dillon said himself that he never saw the back of the man who held up stores. He had no clue that the man had a belt in the back.
Leroy, I believe you are correct. Mr. Dillon made it seem like his store had been robbed so Mr. Jones wouldn't know that it was him that took the money. And he nearly got away with it.
Did you get that from a TV program?
No, I actually read it in a book about detectives and their methods of observation.
Well, this proves it's important to listen carefully to detail and watch closely. Maybe you could be a detective one day.
You know what? I think you're right. I could.